All right, if you've been watching, you know that recently we burned up the connection between our shore power cable and our surge protector. And I've been thinking about what to do with that. I didn't know if I wanted to buy just a whole new surge protector. Didn't know if I wanted to replace the burned end of the surge protector or just what I wanted to do. But after thinking about it and looking at all of the options for replacing the plug on the end of the surge protector, I just didn't feel like I was gonna be able to find one that was completely waterproof and keep the moisture out of that. So I've decided to take this surge protector that normally just plugs right into the power pedestal. They call it the portable version of the Power Watchdog surge protector, and I'm gonna convert that into a hardwired version. They do make hardwired versions of this that are a little bit easier to connect than what I'm about to do. And basically all I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna connect this in line between where the shore power cable comes into the side of the rig, so kind of down in the basement. It's actually behind the fireplace over here. And I'm just gonna cut that line and then splice both ends of that line into the surge protector. And then of course I'm gonna do some testing on that. I'll do some voltage testing to make sure everything's hooked up correctly. And then once I got it hooked up and all the voltage checks check out, then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put it under some load and make sure that I've got all those little current transformers in there that measure how much current is flowing through each line. And then I'll do some secondary checks on that with a clamp-on ammeter at the breaker box to make sure that everything jives and everything's reading the way that it should. I don't think this is going to be a very hard job. It's just getting back here behind the fireplace, figuring out where I want to splice into, and then just simply connecting it up. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So just to give you a basic idea of what I'm going to do here, we have the 3 lines that are coming in here, the 2 hots and the neutral, and then down here you can see the ground that comes in. And then of course on the other side we have the same thing. We have the 2 hots, the neutral, and the ground connection. So first thing I'll have to do is I'll have to take this board out, just completely disconnect that so I have room to work. And then I'll have to take this ground connection apart. So basically the ground just bypasses kind of all of this internal stuff here for the most part. So I'm gonna have to get into there and rewire that as well. And then of course I'll need to take these little current transformers over here and transfer those over to the new lines that are coming in. Now if you remember back from when I had the issue with the shore power, we talked about what this circuit card was for here, and this is the one that you can replace if your surge protector takes a hit from like lightning or some kind of power surge that burns this module up. Basically, you can just order and replace this circuit card without having to replace the entire surge protector. And this should be a fairly simple deal here to remove this. This should just pull right out. There we go, there's one connection. There we go. So it's a little tight in there, but definitely doable. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna tackle here is I'm gonna tackle this ground wire. So you can see that it does have some input into the circuitry here through this green wire, comes into this connection and then out and then over to this other circuit card here. But we should be able to just pull all this apart. Now obviously if this was still under warranty, it would void that warranty, but this thing's 3 years old outside of its warranty, so I'm not worried about it. All right, we've got the surge protector prepped, meaning we've just got all the leads from the two ends removed. We've got the ground lead re-stripped, and all of that is ready to be reconnected. So now what we need to do is I need to open up that fireplace there, take a look behind, see where I want to splice straight into the shore power cable. Now again, that's the cable that comes in through the side of the RV and then goes over to the breaker box. Now, in my case, I've got a transfer switch in between there, but the concept is the same. It's coming from the shore power pedestal. When I'm hooked up to shore power, it comes in through the RV and then to the breaker box via that transfer switch. So I'm going to open that up and take a look and see what that looks like. It's been a few months since I was back there, so I don't quite remember. I think I got plenty of cable back there, but let's just take a look. All right, so we can see where the shore power comes in right here through the side of the rig, and then it just goes right along the bottom there. And like I said, that cable goes over to my transfer switch, and looks like I got plenty of length there to do what I need to do. So I'm just gonna probably have to remove that little ring down there and that zip tie that's holding it in place, and we'll get that cut and then get everything stripped back. But first, obviously, the first thing we've got to do is get power turned off to that cable. So what I'm going to do is just switch over to our batteries, our EcoFlow systems, so that we still have power in here. So I'm going to do a little electrical safety dummy check here, but before I do, that looks pretty good, dear. Anyway, so what I'm going to do here is, you saw me disconnect the shore power from the rig at the pedestal, but what I want to do is make sure that there's nothing backfeeding through that line. I don't have any reason to believe that there's anything getting backfed through there when I'm on my EcoFlow system, but I don't know if I ever checked. So we're just going to check it. It's always better to be safe than sorry when you're talking about electricity. So we're just going to take our multimeter here and go over to the end of that cable, and we're just going to verify that it is in fact de-energized. All right, so a very simple check here. I'm just going to check, you know, hot to hot, hot to ground, and make sure that there's no voltage on there. So it's a pretty simple check. All right, so I got no voltage there, so I feel more comfortable about actually cutting into that shore power cable inside of the rig. All right, so I think I'm just gonna cut this right here. I've got good slack on either side to do whatever I need to do with those wires inside. And I think I've got plenty of room to just set this thing on the ground right here. I may put some screws down in on the corners of it just to keep it secure, but this area of the rig, when we're going down the road, there's really no movement here, no bouncing up and down or anything. So I think this is a really good place to put that. The answer is no. I do not have anything better to cut through this wire than a pair of dikes. So bear with me here. Whew. Well, that wasn't easy with these, but we're going to clean that up a little bit once we get everything stripped back, but we'll be all right. I think the hardest part here is going to be actually just getting all of these wires cut down to the right length. It's not going to be super difficult, but the difference is the ground wire is going to need to be a little bit longer because it's going to have to come in and wrap around on both sides and then connect in the middle. So it's got to be just a little bit longer. And then the other three are going to be a little bit shorter, as they're just going to plug, you know, straight into the mainline connections on this. Other side is going to be just slightly more tricky because I've got these little current transformers that I have to deal with. So I have to route them through these current transformers and then into the separate connections on the load side of this surge protector. So as you can see here now, we've got both hots and the neutral hooked up to either side of the surge suppressor, and then we've got our ground wire running in there just like it was before, and then we've got our 3 current transformers hooked back up in there, and then I've also reinstalled that card that we took out in the very beginning. So I think we're ready for a retest here. And what we're going to do basically is I'm just going to leave the cover off of this thing. Then I'm going to go out and shut the breaker at the pedestal, and then probably just take a few voltages in here, assuming that it doesn't blow up right away. So that's what we're going to do. And then what we'll do is we'll switch all the load back over to shore power from my power stations. We'll get some load going on the system, and then we'll just do some current measurements and compare what we see in the app versus what I see in my clamp-on ammeter. All right, so Candace is out there. She's going to shut this breaker for us, and we're going to make sure nothing goes boom. All right, so that went swimmingly. Nothing blew up. So now what I'm going to do is take some voltage checks and see what we've got, make sure we got the right voltages everywhere we need them. And I'm going to do it on both sides. I don't know if that's really necessary, but it's going to make me feel better. So we're going to go from red to white, 125 volts. We're going to go from black to white, 125 volts. We're going to do that both sides here, black to white, 125 volts or 124 or whatever, and then red to white here, 125 volts. Then I want to just test this ground, 125 volts, 125 volts. So I think we're good. So now what I want to do is I'm going to check it on the Watchdog app to make sure that it just shows everything that it should show. It shows 124 volts on both lines. And now what I'm going to do is, Candace is standing over here. She is going to take that transfer switch over to the shore power position. We should see some load on both sides. So if you're ready, hit it. There we go. Got about 2 amps on line 1. We got about 10 amps on line 2. I think everything's golden. So now I'm just gonna have Candace transfer back over to basically nothing, the neutral position where we're not getting power from anywhere. So we'll be on battery here for just a little bit, but I need to do that. I need to turn that power off so that we can get the cover back on this thing and get it situated how I want it. The last thing I wanted to do here is to take some readings with my clamp-on ammeter and then compare that to what I'm seeing in the Watchdog surge suppressor app, just to make sure that those current transformers are in there properly. The problem that I'm having here, as you can see in the bottom of the breaker box, those 2 incoming lines, those 2 hot lines that come into the breaker box, there's just not enough room down there to get the clamp around those cables individually. So what I've had to do here is just kind of turn some load on inside of the rig, i.e. turn a couple of air conditioners on, look at that Watchdog app, and verify just on my past experience. I know how many amps each line should be drawing when I've got those AC units running and basically nothing else in the rig turned on. So that's what I've done here. I just kind of used my experience with what I'm seeing on the Watchdog app, and I can tell that those current transformers are in there doing exactly what they need to be doing, and they're positioned properly. All right guys, so that's gonna wrap it up. The only thing that I have left to do really is to just figure out how to secure that thing to the floor. It shouldn't move around much back in there just because of where it's at in the rig, but I just wanna make sure it's not kind of sliding all over the place when we get on those really bumpy roads. I'm glad that worked out because like I said earlier, I really didn't wanna have to buy a new one of those, and replacing the plug on it just really wasn't high on my list of things that I wanted to do, just because those things are so hard to get watertight and I didn't want any moisture in there. And not to mention, I just saved myself about 300 bucks. And as always, this is a video about how I did it. It's not a how-to video. Again, Hughes does sell one of these power Watchdogs that has all of the right external connections on it so that you can permanently mount your own if that's what you want to do. And if that's what you want to do, I would recommend that you buy one of those. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to get all my stuff cleaned up out here, and then I'm going to start figuring out how I'm going to more permanently secure that thing to the floor in there.